Welcome to How Women Inspire. Today, you're in for a treat. We are joined by Tamesa Rogers. She is an extremely successful chief people officer. She's been doing it for 25 years, leading organizations, organizational growth, really focusing on leadership. Most recently, she was at Netgear and helped them scale from 300 million to 1.3 billion in revenue and built the entire HR function from the ground up. That is huge and so very visible. Can't wait to dig into your experiences there. And Tamisa is also a limited partner at How Women Invest. She's committed to the future of who's running companies by being a venture investor. She's also just joined our executive board of advisors in Silicon Valley, California. So excited for you to meet her. She is the kind of leader that we are all looking for, values aligned and just brilliant with great depth of experience. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and you made me sound so fabulous.
Well, very easy. I'm jazzed to dive into the business side of this, but I just think that, I'd like to ask you a question. Have you sort of get into sort of a little bit of like if you were hosting a dinner party with three trailblazing women, who would be on your guest list? Do you have a
Wow.
burning question that you'd ask each of them?
So I think given the time that we're in, I probably would pick women who have had successes, failures, disappointments, highs and lows. And so I think I would pick Maya Angelou, Michelle Obama, and Madam CJ Walker, I think from a business perspective and also just living life. And I would want to know, given the time period that we're in, like, how do you keep pressing forward in light of disappointment after you've seen what is possible and maybe you've taken some steps back outside of your control? Like, how do you keep hopeful? And do you allow yourself a little bit of time to ball up into a corner in the dark and rest? And if so, how long? So I think that would be the conversation that I would want to have with them.
Oh my goodness. I love that in the context of where we're at today because Madam CJ Walker, who, for everybody listening, I might butcher this whole story, but, Black woman started selling like hair care products door to door and created a multi-level marketing kind of rollout for this. And this was, what was it, probably 150 years ago, 100 years ago, like a long time.
Early 1900s.
Yeah. And so she in Maid was the first there. It's kind of the story. But that not only were there forces that were making it challenging for her as a Black woman in general, but just the human dynamic of all the disappointments of the people who you think you're helping that my guess is she probably had people who disappointed her, who didn't have the same kind of integrity and things. And just how do you work through those moments, right?
Right. And how do you stay hopeful? Because there's
Yeah.
gonna be challenges in life. I don't think anyone believes that life is going to be easy, but there are things that happen outside of your control that are not right and should not happen. And how do you continue to press forward?
If I could be a fly on
Sorry.
that dinner, that would be great. Wouldn't that make me happy? Maya Angelou can just give us well, she's got the inspiring
Yeah,
I mean,
she
go
had, like,
through all
5
week
different
long.
lives.
I
Right.
mean, literally the whole week. What did I think it was Maya Angelou who had this quote about courage, and she was like, "You cannot live other values if you don't have courage." Like, that is the cornerstone of everything. You can't pretend like you have integrity and that you're living your values if you don't aren't courageous, and today's a moment for courage.
Right.
I'd love to know, is there a defining moment for you that really propelled your leadership? Because being a chief people officer in the multi-billion dollar, $1.3 billion company, that's huge. That's a lot of responsibility. What got you there? And everybody else is probably saying they want you to be their guest at a dinner to hear about how you did that and sort of what your experience was. So what was the pivotal moment or what shaped your leadership?
So one, I didn't have a choice. Like, I was thrust into leadership. I was the first HR employee at Netgear. There was never anyone above me in HR, so I pretty much had to figure it out. But what I will say is that I've always been interested in people. I always want to understand how they think. I want to understand how they hear, how they communicate, because it's important to me that I deliver messages in the way that the receiver can hear them and not in the way that I speak. So I think an important part of leadership is understanding each person that you directly impact, but then overall, sort of what the general culture of the group or organization or your department is, and really try to speak in that way. Not not change a message, but deliver the message the way that it can be heard.
I mean, you can know that intellectually, but being able to have the discipline to do that on a regular basis is a big deal.
I think my mother always calls me the diplomat. Everyone comes to me in the family to talk about to someone else. But I think it's really when you want to understand someone else and how you can get them to do either what they want to do or what you want them to do, it's important to understand how they are motivated. And I think that was sort of a part of me that was innate, but then a lot of it was just I have a determination not to fail. So if you put me in a position, even if I feel like I am not qualified, I am going to figure it out because I am not going to fail. So I think that has also helped me
That's
rise through
interesting.
the ranks from senior manager all the way to chief people officer.
Do you have something in your head that's saying you are not failing? Do you use is that word or is it a more positive word like, "Oh, no, we're gonna succeed. We've got this."
No, it's like you are not gonna make me fail. Like, and
Alright.
not you as in me, but like
Oh,
whatever
whoever
the
is around
adversary
you that
is.
feels like they're putting up a roadblock. What's Can I ask you what your birth order is?
I'm the oldest of
Yeah.
4.
Look at you. Oh, yes, look at you. Sure everybody gets along, taking
Right.
care of everybody, always the organized one that's getting everybody in line. Yeah,
My mom and dad
makes
used
a
to
lot
always
of
tell
sense.
me I was the one that set the pace. If I messed up, then I made it worse for everyone behind me. If I did well, then I made it easier for everyone behind me. So it was responsibility that I took on and continue to take on in other areas of my life as well.
Yeah. Well, the transformation, if you ask me, from being like the first HR person, which is like, fill out this form, to being the chief people officer of a massive institution, how did you have to evolve? I mean, you get it by being the firstborn of four, but to a certain extent, like you had to be the understanding a lot of the people side, not just the filling out the form side. But how did you evolve as a leader going from that small, just I think of it as a different role,
Right.
completely, right?
Yeah. So when I transitioned from director to vice president, I had an executive coach. And one thing that she worked with me on, she was like, "You have to show up differently. These are people who know you, but they know you in a different light." So I was always part of the executive team, but everyone else was vice president and CEO, CFO. I was the only director. So when I became a vice president, she gave me some really good advice, like, "You have to show up differently." So first, I had to believe that this is my role, and then I had to speak up. I had to show them that I was a vice president, and it took a little bit. I think I was always well respected, but I think showing up as a vice president and being more forceful with what I thought, what I disagreed with, how I thought things should happen, as opposed to at a pure level versus, yes, you're the director of HR. You're HR, so we have to listen to you, but I'm a vice president and this is what I think, this is what I feel. So, I had to believe it first. And then I just took little steps. I would come up with, this is what I think we should do, and here's how I think we should do it. And then gradually it started changing. So that's the advice that I would always give my leaders, was that when you get promoted, you need to show up differently. But you have to believe it first.
There's an old thing they used to say is like, you should wear the outfit that your boss or your boss's boss wears, if that's where you wanna go. Like, this is like
Yeah.
sort of the kind of an example of that, like, but you're wearing the persona, you're, like, putting on a whole 'nother frame. Were there shifts in how you led as well? Like, what are the elements that you would say, or even the advice you would give to somebody else coming up behind you about how to really think about your impact as a leader? And were you able to really carry your core values with you the whole time?
I was. So I thought about it from a scope perspective. Like my scope continued to change each time that I was promoted. I was asked to do different things. So I thought about it from a scope perspective. As a manager, I manage. As a director, I directed. Vice president, now I'm responsible for this scope. I have to think up initiatives. I have to figure out how it aligns with the business strategy. I have to make recommendations that get followed through by my department. So I looked at it from a scope perspective, and that's the advice that I gave other people. So because Netgear there were a lot of long tenured people at Netgear. There were a number of people who would rise through the ranks, and that would be the advice that I would give them. Like, what are your new responsibilities, and how does that require you to show up differently? And if you can identify those areas, then now you know what your assignment is, you know what your tasks are.
I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not asking for a seat at the table. My friends, this is the first generation of us. We have a huge opportunity. We have power and influence and wealth. And we can start building the tables where we get the prime seats. Today, we want to invite you to join us as investors in venture. I know no one's asked you to do it before. It might be something that seems scary or foreign, but I promise you it's not that different than investing in a mutual fund where your retirement funds are. I want you to lean in and just learn a little bit more. How about making a commitment that in the next 12 months, you can give yourself 12 months to figure it out and to take a step. I want to invite you to be part of the new table of power and influence and wealth. You're invited. I want to sit at the table with you because we're going to make big change. We're going to make the world we've been dreaming of. So you talk about developing your team to even come and replace you. Like, I think a lot of people fear that. What's your headspace and how did you think about that as a leader?
So I think one of a leader's responsibilities is to work themselves out of a job. I think as I continue to grow and want to do new things and develop, the people behind me want to do so as well. So as I'm moving up, they should all be moving up. And so I was at Netgear for 21 years.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time. I had the highest retention. My department had the highest retention throughout the company. But what that meant is I had to come up with new ways to engage my direct reports. So I found myself like giving little parts of the role that I was doing to them, and eventually like worked myself out of a job, which is the best place to be. When I left Netgear, one of my direct reports rose up and took the top HR spot. So I think that it's important that you develop your team and don't be afraid to work yourself out of a job, because that means that now you are ready for something new as well.
Yeah. 21 years. So there's a friend of mine who wrote a book. Her name is Diva Parashathian and did a TED Talk about, she called The One, the Few, the Only. I think was the name of the book and the TED Talk, but she worked at Deloitte for 25 years and got sick and burnt out. And really, I think more than anything, she did a bunch of research and because she saw other women of color around her having the similar experience and really documented the cost of working in environments that weren't really designed for you. Now, maybe because you designed the environment from day one and you built that whole HR organization, maybe it was different for you. But how do you think about that? Making sure people stay healthy over time, even when they're in an environment where it's culturally a square peg, round hole, or burnout that people face. Like 21 years is a long time. How do you manage that for yourself? And what advice would you give to other people?
I didn't manage it well. I would take vacations, but they were still kind of working vacations. I still had my phone. And there was a period of time where every year there was a new challenge. So there was like a 7-year span where I didn't really feel like I had ever like exhaled. So what I would advise that I did not do, but what I would do the next time is really figure out how to find spaces of time to exhale. Like for me, when I left Netgear, there was nothing on my calendar. So I took a month and a half and I did nothing. And it was the best thing ever. Everyone's not going to be able to do that. So is there a 4-day weekend that you can create every couple of months? You probably can't do it every month, but like maybe once a quarter, you take at least 4 days, if not more, depending on what your schedule, and you really disconnect. Like delete your email app off of your phone, like really allow yourself time to disconnect, because there's so much creativity that comes when you are not focused on the what's next. or what's going on. Your mind is able to kind of relax and just think about everything. Like just let sort of like when you meditate, how you just let everything pass through you, all your thoughts pass through you. If you can create spaces where you can just exhale, it minimizes the burnout. It won't eliminate it. I also firmly believe that we do not do it right in America with respect to time off. Like I want to move to Europe where the month of August I can just take off and enjoy my family, but that's not where I work. So, but I think take the space that you can take.
I love that. I just wanna underscore that. I've been burnt out. I've figured it out, then I've gone back. Like, I've done a bit of the roller coaster in my own life, but it is so clear to me that having real time to disconnect absolutely creates that ramp opportunity. I'll tell you one of the things you said you took a month and a half off, but
Y
after the role? You know, 18 months is what I tell people. If you've never taken a break, you need it took me 18 months and everyone else I watch and I talk to, it's like, "Oh, yeah, that's how long it really takes." Before you actually have that excitement about what's next, the energy to create or to envision really something new. Like, I paid an executive coach $250 an hour for that whole time, once a week, and I wasted so much money because basically every time I just show up and I'd be like, "I don't know what I wanna be when I grow up. I'm too tired," I couldn't figure it out, So, I hope everybody listening to this both sees your career and your great advice, but also understands that there's what we need to do is do another podcast in 10 years to see what happens now that you're getting a break.
Yes.
What is gonna be that huge next impact you're gonna have in the world?
Right. Yeah, I have so many ideas, I have so much energy, like, I am ready. Where
Right.
last year, I had all these plans, but I was just like, "No, never mind," and it took me a couple weeks to wake up and not reach for my email.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah, your body gets addicted.
Right.
Well, and my acupuncturist, that sounds so very California, but she was like, "You need to stop living on adrenaline. This is depleting you, it's gonna kill you. There's other ways to show up in the day,
Yeah,
not anxious and coffee first and, like, all that,"
right.
which very it served a purpose in our younger years, but certainly in your mid-40s, early 50s, you wake up and you gotta do life differently.
It's so different,
Yeah.
it's so different.
Because look at all you've achieved. You don't have to go do the stuff you used to do, and you should be engaged in things that are about your presence and your ideas and your leadership, not
Right.
about what you can do. That's the big transformation I think that happens at this stage.
Yeah.
You seem fearless to me. How do you navigate a world where there are challenges and you seem so calm and so so in control all the time?
The time off, I tell you. But it's not that I am fearless. There are lots of things that I'm afraid of, but I'm in a season in my life right now where I'm just leaning into everything that scares me. I want to learn, I want to grow, and all of that terrifies me because I'm used to what I do. I'm used to what I know. I'm used to where I go. But that's not helping me grow. So I am, for example, the visible impact course. I am taking that and it terrifies me because I really like doing the work in the background in the shadows. But to like
You need you to actually be visible, right? Yeah.
exactly. So I am that is my current motto is that I'm leaning into what to everything that scares me.
Well, boy, am I glad because 'cause I'll tell you, like, there are so many young women I want to be able to see this podcast and to understand the path that you've taken because it's gonna be instructive for them. So I don't know if this felt like this was part of what scares you or anything, but you became an investor, an LP in how women invested. You ever invested in a venture fund before?
Never in a venture fund. I think, I had company stock. I wanted to diversify. I didn't want everything in company stock, so I worked with a financial advisor and I started creating a more diversified portfolio. And then during COVID, like everyone else, me and my girlfriends would set up Zoom calls and we'd have happy hours and we were just talking about things. And all of a sudden, the conversation shifted towards like, how can we make money? How can we band together and do something? And so we created an investment club. And then from that, I started to get more interested in investing. And I think it was just a perfect opportunity to hear more about how women invest and understand how easy it is to become an LP and make a change.
It seems like it must be hard, but it's not at all, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think the idea is
yeah.
daunting.
Yeah.
But when you hear like how you can do it, it's not.
Well, you chose to invest in a venture firm specifically focused on women founders. Is that a particular value of yours? Like, what is it about women founders that are giving you hope today?
I believe in building community. I think that that's one thing that's going to also get us through. And women are underrepresented and in many instances undervalued in business. And if I can do something to help women succeed and to show and prove that we are just as capable, if not more. I think there are stats that show that women-led companies are more profitable. So I think that if there's anything I can do to help, I'm all in.
You're magnificent. Would you mind if I do like a lightning round of some questions?
Okay.
All right. Okay. What's a piece of advice that you've received that has stayed with you?
Never care about something more than the person who should. And sometimes you have to let the train crash.
Oh, God. Mic drop moment. I have to think about those. Those are great. What's a song that gets you pumped up for a big day?
So I'm an R&B girl, so I'm kind of mellow, but if I feel like I need to go to war, it's probably going to be something Jay-Z DMX. Like Party Up, DMX is my go-to.
What is one book that you would recommend for all aspiring female leaders?
One, that's hard. So there were 2 books that were recommended to me that I would in turn recommend, and the first was Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, and the second was Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. I think both speak to courage, vulnerability, and how if you just push past what you're afraid of, there's a whole world out there.
Do you have a personal motto or a quote that you live by?
It used to be do it afraid, now it is lean into what scares you.
And finally, how can people find you?
Well, I am taking a break from most social media right now, but I am still on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Tamesa Rogers.
Tamisa, thank you so much for this. What a gift. And oh my God, so many beautiful nuggets for women to hear and to know. I want to just acknowledge you for stepping into being more visible. I know I don't want to be like, soapboxy, but we have got to show what disciplined, responsible, courageous, integrity filled leadership looks like today more than ever. And so you are that. And I know it's not super comfortable and you don't have to do it probably for your own self, but the rest of us need to be able to see you, and I need my daughters to see you. So thank you for stepping into your power and really taking up space. Really appreciate it. Need it today.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for creating a space where it is easy to walk into what scares you. I think that you have built a community that is so welcoming, and it encourages me to do things that scare me and let me know that it's okay.
Good, good, good. Well, it's easier if you're doing it with other women like you. So I think that's probably the biggest magic at how women lead. Thank you for leading. Thank you
Thank
for
you.